The first two VC firms listened politely, nodding at the right moments, their smiles tight and rehearsed. They liked the idea, they said. They admired my ambition, but they were looking for safer ventures, proven markets, more traditional paths to growth. All just polite words that meant the same thing. You're too young. You're unproven. You're not one of us. Walking out of those first meetings felt like stepping back into my father's living room, judged, dismissed, underestimated. But the third meeting was different. The firm was called Orion Ventures, a rising star known for funding bold, risky innovations. Their office wasn't lined with mahogany desks and framed stock certificates like the firms my father worshipped. It was full of whiteboards, glass walls covered in equations, and prototypes from companies they'd backed. The managing partner, Elena Morales, stepped into the room, tall, sharp-eyed, and dressed in a simple black blazer. She radiated quiet authority. She shook my hand firmly. "James Harrison," she said, reading my name from the pitch deck. "No relation to those Harrisons, I assume?" I hesitated, not wanting the name, not wanting the weight that came with it. "Not anymore," I said simply. She smiled slightly, intrigued. "All right, impress me." I launched into my pitch. The diagrams, the data, the prototype results, the potential to reshape global energy infrastructure. I expected the usual skepticism, the careful smiles, the "we'll get back to you." But Elena's face never wavered. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing with each slide. When I finished, the room was silent. "James," she finally said, "do you understand what you've built here?" "I have an idea," I replied cautiously. "No," she said, "you have a revolution." She stood, crossed her arms, and looked at me with an intensity that made my throat go dry. "This technology, if scalable, could power cities. It could stabilize grids. It could take entire nations off fossil fuels. It could change geopolitics. Do you have any idea how many companies, countries, even governments will want this?" I swallowed hard. "I know what it can do. I just don't have the means to build it." She tapped her pen against the table. "We do." My heart hammered. "I want to lead your Series A," she said. $3 million to develop your first full-scale prototype. "But I'm not investing in the tech alone, I'm investing in you. Before we go any further, I need to know something." Her voice softened. "Why did you walk away from the Harrison empire? Most people would kill for that kind of safety net." The question hit me harder than expected. Memories of my father's sneer, the money thrown at my feet, the cold marble floors, they all rushed back. "Because I don't want to inherit someone else's legacy," I said quietly. "I want to build my own." For a moment, Elena studied me with something like approval. "Good answer." She held out her hand. "Welcome to Orion Ventures. Let's change the world." I shook her hand, barely believing the words were real. $3 million, a lab, a team, the chance I had fought for with bloodshot eyes and empty pockets. When I stepped outside, Maya and David were waiting across the street. Maya was pacing nervously. David leaned against a parked scooter, pretending not to look anxious. I walked toward them slowly, letting the tension build, fighting back a smile. "Well?" David asked. I took a deep breath. "We got it," Maya screamed. David grabbed my shoulders. Cars honked at us from the street, but I didn't care. For the first time since walking away from my parents' empire, I felt something burning deep inside me. Possibility. That night, we celebrated in the cafe where it all began. The espresso machine I'd repaired hissed steam behind the counter like it was cheering too. Maya brought out a chocolate cake with 98.7% written on top in frosting. As we laughed and toasted with cheap champagne, I looked at the two people beside me, Maya, who had given me shelter when I had nothing, and David, who had believed in my designs when they were still just sketches on a notebook page. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But I didn't know then that success would come with a price, that the higher I climbed, the more the world would take notice, and not all of that attention would be welcome. Because the Harrisons thought I was gone for good. They thought I was out of their world. They thought I was irrelevant. They were wrong. While I spent the next few years building something groundbreaking, my father was quietly watching from a distance, tracking my progress, hearing whispers about a mysterious new energy startup led by a young engineer with an unfamiliar last name. And when my company finally made headlines, when our prototype shocked the global energy sector, when investors fought over shares and the government knocked on our door, my father would discover a truth he could never have imagined. The failure he threw out with $100 had become the man who would redefine the world's future. And he would come calling. But I wasn't the same boy he'd thrown away. Not anymore. Firms gave me the same polite rejection every time. Brilliant, but too risky. Promising, but too ambitious. It's impressive work, but not for us. It was like reliving my childhood, everyone admiring the idea, yet doubting me. But the third meeting? That one rewrote my fate. Quantum Ventures conference room overlooked the skyline like it owned the sun. Frosted glass, polished metal, thick silence, the kind of place built to intimidate. Alexander Martinez, the lead partner, mid-40s, razor-sharp eyes, ex-engineer turned venture capitalist, studied me as if scanning for structural weaknesses. Then she set my prototype report down. Your technology, she said slowly, could revolutionize renewable energy storage. It could alter the entire global energy landscape. My heart hammered. But why? She continued, leaning back. Should we trust a 23-year-old unknown with something that will attract enormous attention? The room felt too small. I met her stare head-on. Because I spent the last year proving that impossible things are possible, I said, give me a chance, and I'll prove one more. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled, just slightly, like she'd made a private decision. $5 million, she said, for 25% of the company. My breath caught. You're investing? We're betting, she corrected, on the long shot who works like a man chasing the sun. And just like that, Quantum Ventures took the leap no one else would. I named the company Nova Energy Systems, a private joke only I understood, a star born from nothing, a light emerging from darkness. We moved into a small rented facility on the outskirts of the city, cold, echoing hallways, scuffed concrete floors, a lab that smelled like solder, burnt plastic, and relentless ambition. I hired a tiny but brilliant team, engineers who didn't mind sleeping on office couches and eating instant ramen at 2 a.m., if it meant chasing a breakthrough. The world didn't see the nights we almost quit. The prototypes that blew up. The calculations that led nowhere. The investors who warned we were running out of time. The fear that maybe, just maybe, my family had been right. But we kept going. 2 years later, we stood in the lab staring at our first commercial-scale storage system. It hummed softly, alive with potential. When the test results printed out, the room went silent. 99.1% efficiency. Nearly 3 times more powerful than any existing energy storage system. Clean energy wasn't just viable, it was unstoppable. Word spread like wildfire. Suddenly the same firms that had turned me away were calling nonstop. Energy giants, governments, billion-dollar corporations, everyone wanted what Nova had created. 3 years after that meeting with Martinez, Nova Energy Systems went public. The stock doubled the first day. Tripled by the fourth. By the end of the week, my stake alone was worth over $100 million. With that success came something I hadn't expected, closure. I bought my first suit since leaving home, not the stiff, overpriced suits from my father's tailor. This one was sleek, modern, designed for someone who built the future, not clung to the past. Maya, now our head of operations, folded her arms as I examined it in the mirror. Planning to impress someone? She teased. No, I said quietly, but I think it's time to visit home. 5 years. 5 years without a word. I'd followed their downfall from afar. Harrison Sons Investment Group, once a towering empire, was now crumbling, disrupted by fintech, left behind by innovation, choking under its own arrogance. Worse, they were facing a hostile takeover from a mysterious tech-focused investment firm. A firm they thought was their enemy. They had no idea it was mine. Digital Horizon Capital, the predator stalking their dying empire, was a subsidiary of my company. I booked the flight. Maya noticed me staring at an old family photo before I packed it away. Are you sure about this? She asked softly. I closed the suitcase. They taught me that money is the only measure of worth, I said. Time to show them exactly what I'm worth. The Harrison Sons headquarters was frozen in time, polished limestone, gold-trimmed entrances, marble floors that smelled of old wealth and cold pride, the same place where I'd once walked as a disappointment. This time, I walked through the front door as the CEO of the company acquiring them. Mr. Blake, here to see the board. The receptionist nodded politely, unaware she had just greeted the ghost of the past. The boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood. Oil portraits of dead chairmen. The family crest glinting above the fireplace. I had sat on the carpet under that table as a child, listening to my father boast about destroying competitors. How poetic that I now sat at the head of the table, his seat. They filed in. Board members, executives, gray hair and expensive watches and fading power. Then my father entered. He scanned the room, eyes sliding over me without recognition. His once commanding presence had wilted. Gentlemen, I began. I'm here on behalf of Digital Horizon regarding our acquisition offer. We're not interested in being bought, my father snapped, especially not by some tech upstart. He still hadn't looked at my face. Harrison Sons has survived for 150 years. And won't survive 5 more, I interrupted. Then I let my voice fall naturally. No disguise. Right, father? Silence. He froze, slowly, painfully. He looked at me. James? I smiled. Hello, father. Miss me? A murmur rippled through the room. Old Mr. Peterson blinked. Little James Harrison? Actually, it's James Blake now, I said, and we're not here to reminisce. We're here to discuss the future of your company. My father's face twisted. This is some trick. You're working for Digital Horizon. No, I said, sliding a folder across the table. I own Digital Horizon, through Nova Energy Systems. Shock, realization, fear. Yes, I added, that Nova, the one disrupting the global energy sector. My father whispered, you left with nothing. No, I corrected, I left with $100, your lesson on what money means. I gestured to my assistant, who handed out more folders. Here's what that $100 bought. Nova Energy Systems, valued at $4. $2 billion. Digital Horizon Capital, my investment arm. And as of this morning, we own 45% of your shares. I flipped my own folder open. We also quietly acquired most of your corporate debt through various shell companies. My father's hands shook. The offer is simple, I said. Harrison Sons will be absorbed into Digital Horizon. The board dissolved. And you, father, will step down immediately. You can't do this, he roared. The family legacy. The family legacy is drowning, I snapped, because you refused to evolve. Board members stared at the table, ashamed. You have 24 hours to agree, I finished. Refuse, and we call in your debt. Harrison Sons will collapse before the week ends. My father stood, trembling with rage. You would destroy your own family? No, I said quietly. You destroyed it. I'm just giving it a purpose. 24 hours later, under crushing pressure, they signed. In the same boardroom where he once threw $100 at me, I watched my father sign away the empire he'd chosen over his son. Afterward, he approached me. He looked small, human. You planned this, he whispered. All of it. No, I said. You planned it the day you told me my dreams were worthless. And now? He swallowed. Will you destroy everything out of revenge? No, I said. I'll rebuild it into something meaningful. He watched me leave like a man watching his past walk away forever. 6 months later, Harrison Sons no longer existed. It had become part of a global force for sustainable energy, a company that actually contributed something to the world. My father retired quietly. My mother made attempts to reconnect, but I kept my distance. Some relationships are too broken to salvage. Then, 1 year later, a small package arrived. Inside were the same $100 bills he'd thrown at me. I had left them on his desk after the takeover. There was only a short note. You were worth more than I knew. I took the money to the cafe where everything began and left it as a tip. Not because I needed closure. Not because I cared about the money. But because it felt right. That $100 once defined my lowest point. Now it symbolized the empire I built from nothing. People say money can't buy happiness. Maybe that's true. But that $100 taught me something priceless. Worth isn't inherited, it's built. I built an empire. I rewrote my destiny. And I did it not because of the Harrison name, but in spite of it. That's a legacy no one can take away.